Her son forged her signature while she was recovering from surgery. Olivia Jameson, retired librarian and grandmother of 2, found out years too late. Eric still smiled at family dinners, still called her mom, still thought she'd never notice. But one account freeze turned into 7, and by the time he caught on, she already owned the fallout. She'd once taught him to write his name. Now, she was erasing it from her future. And when he finally asked, "Why would you do this to your own son?" she didn't blink. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The highway had turned from rain-slick blacktop to sleet-covered slush hours ago, but Olivia gripped the wheel like a surgeon. 6 hours behind her, her apartment sat dark and tidy, the thermostat turned down low. She hadn't stopped once, not even for coffee. Now she stood on the porch, numb fingers curled inside her coat sleeves, the sound of laughter muffled behind the thick mahogany door. Frost glazed the edges of the brass handle. Her breath billowed in white clouds. She pressed the doorbell again, letting the chime echo deep into the house. No footsteps approached, just the faint sound of clinking silverware and a burst of children's giggles. She rang a third time and stepped back. No use knocking. The storm door swallowed sound like insulation. After 27 minutes, the door finally cracked open. Ashley appeared in a knit cashmere set, holding a stemless wine glass. "Oh, Olivia, we didn't hear the bell," she said with a quick, airy smile, as if Olivia had arrived early or unexpected. "I've been out here for a while," Olivia said, voice controlled, breath visible. Ashley blinked. Oh gosh, was the doorbell not working? It must be the wiring again. No apology, just a sideways step to let her in. "We just sat down. Come on in." The warmth hit Olivia like a slap, stinging her cheeks as she stepped inside. The foyer smelled of sage and roasted garlic. Her boots squeaked faintly on the polished floors. "Hi, Grandma," one of the boys mumbled from the living room without looking up from his tablet. The other was already halfway through a slice of pie. Eric sat at the head of the dining table, phone in hand, texting with his thumb. He looked up and gave her a 1-second glance. "You made good time," he said. No hug, no smile, just an observation. Olivia forced a smile and unwound her scarf with trembling fingers. "It was icy on Route 83, she said. "Took it slow." "Good," Eric said, already looking down again. For a moment, she stood in the hallway like a guest in a hotel lobby, her coat still on, her gloved hand resting on the banister. No one offered to take it. She remembered another winter, decades ago. Eric had been 7, the snow thick outside their old rental house. The power had gone out and they'd lit candles and curled under blankets on the sofa. He'd nestled into her side, sticky with hot cocoa, whispering, "Mommy, I'm warm because of you." Now he didn't even lift his eyes. Ashley was already plating dessert. "Would you like some pumpkin pie?" she asked, lifting a perfect wedge onto a porcelain plate. "Sure," Olivia said quietly. "Kitchen's through there if you want coffee," Ashley added, pointing but not moving. Olivia peeled off her coat and boots in silence, then walked into the kitchen, where everything gleamed with granite and chrome. She poured herself a half cup of lukewarm decaf from a stainless steel carafe, her hands still shaking slightly. She stood alone in the kitchen for a long moment, watching her reflection in the dark window above the sink. Her gray hair frizzed slightly from the cold, her cheeks blotchy from the porch. She smoothed them with her fingers, willing herself to look composed. When she returned to the dining room, Eric was now talking on his phone, something about a supplier invoice. Ashley was posting photos of the food to her Instagram story. One of the kids was whining about Wi-Fi speed. No one noticed Olivia sit down. She forced each bite of pie down her throat like swallowing pins. She nodded when someone said something vaguely funny. She smiled when the boys mentioned school. She asked if they were still in karate. They shrugged. And through it all, something slow and silent curled in her chest, tight and coiled like wire. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't cry, but in the stiff set of her spine, in the white tips of her knuckles where her hand gripped the fork, something old and bitter stirred. They wouldn't remember tonight, but she would, and she would not forget. The dining room had been set like a catalog spread, eucalyptus garland, gold chargers under bone-white plates, candles flickering in perfect symmetry. But Olivia couldn't feel anything warm about it. The table was crowded, but not with affection. Ashley sat across from her, recounting some PTA fundraiser where the catering had almost ruined the vibe. The boys bickered about whose turn it was on the Xbox. Eric scrolled silently, barely touching his plate. Olivia felt invisible, less a relative, more an exhibit quietly aging under soft lights. Ashley refilled her wine. "So, Olivia," she said, drawing the name out like she wasn't quite sure it belonged to family, "do you still use that little flip phone?" Olivia blinked. "No," she said evenly, "got a smartphone last year. Learned how to Zoom and everything." Ashley chuckled, tilting her glass. "Wow, look at you! Modern woman! I swear I can't imagine going back to buttons. My fingers would fall off." Eric didn't look up. "She texts in full sentences. It's kind of adorable." Olivia kept her smile steady, but inside, something pinched. The last time she texted Eric, it had been to say happy birthday. He hadn't replied. As they passed around a second helping of stuffing, Olivia asked, "So, what time should I set my alarm for tomorrow?" Ashley gave her a blank look. Eric cleared his throat. "Actually, we went ahead and booked you a room at the Fairfield down the road. Just thought, in case you wanted your own space." It took a full 3 seconds for the words to register. "Oh," Olivia said softly. Ashley smiled like it was a favor. "Plus, we've got the nanny suite torn up with renovations, and the boys have friends staying over this weekend. It's just a madhouse right now." Olivia looked down at her lap, smoothing the napkin over her knees. "That's fine," she said. "Thank you." The rest of dinner passed in blurry fragments, Eric and Ashley trading inside jokes she didn't understand, stories from vacations she hadn't been invited on. The boys left the table early. No one asked her about her life, her health, her drive. She excused herself quietly after dessert. As she stood to grab her coat, she noticed a stack of glossy brochures half tucked into a wire basket near the door. Private academies with Latin mottos and tuition fees that could buy a car. A new espresso machine glittered on the kitchen counter. Ashley's handbag, slouched on a side chair, bore a gold monogram that whispered, "Custom." Olivia didn't resent the money. What twisted in her was the erasure, the way it all pretended it had grown from nothing. In the motel parking lot, a sodium streetlight buzzed overhead, casting a pale yellow stain across her windshield. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. The room key card felt foreign in her coat pocket. She stared at her hands on the steering wheel. Faint liver spots across the knuckles, veins like a faded map. These hands had signed the FAFSA papers, written checks for Eric's books, and co-signed the lease on his first condo when no bank would take him seriously. She'd told herself then, "This is what a mother does. This is what family means." Now she was a line item no one remembered. Inside the motel room, the heat blasted too hot. She clicked it down 2 notches and sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on. The television played low from the next room. A car door slammed outside. She looked around the beige box of a room, identical wall art, industrial carpet, complimentary water bottle, and realized she could be anyone. To them, maybe she already was. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. Instead, she opened her purse, pulled out her phone, and typed in one word into the search bar. Co-signed account access. The attic smelled like dust and pine and something older. Paper, maybe. Memory. Olivia pulled the chain on the single overhead bulb, its glow casting long shadows over cardboard boxes stacked like relics. Each was labeled in her tight, slanted handwriting, Eric, school, taxes, 2003, condo docs, Miski. She hadn't planned to come up here, but after returning from the motel the next morning, after making tea and failing to finish it, she found herself climbing the attic ladder in slippers and a wool cardigan, driven by something brittle and aching inside her chest. She opened the first box. Tuition receipts, FAFSA confirmations, canceled checks, dozens of them, handwritten in blue ink. $900, August rent, $450, car repairs, $200, phone bill. Each line a wound she'd barely felt at the time. At the bottom of one folder was a typed letter from Eric, dated 2005. Mom, I swear I'll pay you back once things settle. I hate asking again, but this restaurant thing could actually work. I know I haven't been perfect, but I'm trying. I just need your help one more time. She read the letter twice, numb to the tenderness in his tone. All those one more times had added up, hadn't they? The phone calls with the pauses he knew how to time. The I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. The just until next month. She exhaled, long and slow, and moved to the next box. The document was inside a manila envelope, half sealed by time. It was faded, but the bold black title still read, Joint Line of Credit Agreement, Olivia Jameson and Eric Jameson. Her heart ticked in her ears. She scanned the fine print, eyes darting. Eric's name, her own, the balance history, the open status, no close date, no removal of co-ownership. She hadn't seen this in over a decade. A different kind of cold came over her, not the passive chill of a family Thanksgiving, but something sharp and awakening. She opened her laptop. The screen flickered to life, sluggish with age. It still had the sticky residue from where she'd once taped a photo of young Eric in his graduation gown. The photo was gone. The tacky shadow remained. She typed in search after search. Bank joint account access old. Cosigner legal rights. Forgotten lines of credit still open. The articles weren't easy to follow, full of legal jargon and contradictory advice, but she kept at it. There were still ways in. Password recovery processes, security questions she knew the answers to because she'd helped Eric set them years ago. His first pet's name, his high school mascot, the name of the street they lived on when he was 10. She pulled out a legal pad and wrote a single word across the top, access. Then she started drawing arrows, connecting dots, accounts, documents, forgotten corners of a life she'd underwritten. Her breath slowed. Her hands stopped trembling. She was no longer in that motel room, no longer frozen on that porch. She was here, surrounded by a lifetime of quiet receipts and whispered sacrifices. She'd been written out of the narrative, but not off the page. She leaned back against an old trunk, the bulb above her, humming quietly. They'd erased her, but the ledger remembered. And the ledger still had her name. The cursor blinked on the login screen like it was waiting for permission. Hers. Olivia adjusted her reading glasses and leaned forward. Her fingers hovered uncertainly over the keys, hesitating just long enough to feel the weight of what she was doing. The attic was cold, but her palms had gone clammy. She typed the first email address she remembered Eric using back in college, e.jameson33, and hit forgot password. A prompt flashed. Security questions. What was your childhood best friend's name? Olivia smiled faintly. Ricky, the boy who broke Eric's arm in 3rd grade but who still showed up to walk him to school the next day. Click. What was your mother's maiden name? She didn't even have to think. She'd filled out the same form with him 15 years ago. Another click. A new password. A screen of linked accounts. A forgotten corner of the internet now reopened. No red flags. No alarms. She felt lightheaded, and not from guilt. She needed help, though. Technical help. Legal help. Help from someone who wouldn't report her or moralize. She pulled her phone from her pocket and scrolled down until she found the name Ray Benson. Retired banker, old church friend. Trusted, discreet, and, most importantly, owed her one from long ago. She dialed. Olivia? Ray's voice still carried that warm, slightly dusty southern timbre. Well, I'll be damned. Haven't heard from you since, what, Easter potluck? I need a favor, she said quietly. Not illegal, just technical. There was a pause, then a chuckle. You calling me from jail? Number just from an attic. He listened. She gave him the basics, nothing incriminating, nothing emotional. Just enough. Well, if your name's still on those accounts, and you're accessing them through credential recovery, it's not a crime. It's co-ownership, Ray said. They love to forget that part. She jotted down everything he said, tips for digital trails, browser masking, small test transfers. "Don't wake the beast," he warned. "You're not here to empty an account. You're here to learn it." That night, she cleared the kitchen table and opened her laptop again. Chrome browser, incognito window, VPN enabled. She moved like someone studying a lock they once helped install. Her fingers trembled only once, when she landed on a PayPal business dashboard. The account listed both names, Eric Jameson and Olivia Jameson. She hadn't remembered co-signing anything PayPal-related, but there it was, tied to an LLC she vaguely recalled from his gourmet meal prep phase. The balance wasn't huge, but it was real, $872.10. She took a breath, clicked transfer, typed in $87.43, just enough to test the system. A strange symbolic number, half a tank of gas, one motel night, an old grocery bill. She hit confirm. The screen whirred for a beat. Then, transfer successful. No security call, no fraud alert, no text from Eric, just silence. She sat very still, watching the digits shift. The confirmation screen faded into account activity. The money moved like it belonged to her, and part of it still did. She laughed, soft and quiet, not cruel, more like someone who'd just realized they weren't invisible after all. She hadn't expected that small line of code, a successful transfer, to feel like proof of existence, but it did. She closed the laptop gently, as if tucking something in for the night. At the sink, she rinsed her tea mug and glanced out the window. Snow had started again, covering the driveway in slow erasure. The house was still. The attic door hung open above the hallway like a forgotten hatch to another life. She stared up at it, heart ticking steady now. The motel light flickered overhead as Olivia sat on the floral bedspread with her laptop balanced on her knees. The hum of the heater was constant now, a background drone that matched the low current running through her body. She was past the guilt, past hesitation. What she felt now was curiosity, and something deeper, a kind of hunger to understand the thing that had shaped her son more than she ever could. Money. She clicked into the credit dashboard linked to the now-defunct restaurant Eric had opened back in 2011. Bone and Barrel. She remembered it well. Farm to table, candlelight, failures dressed in fancy menus, and on file, business platinum card, dormant, not closed. Her name was still listed under Guarantor 2. She stared at the small freeze icon in the corner. It looked like a snowflake. Innocent. A warning popped up. "Are you sure you want to freeze this card?" Olivia's fingertip hovered over the mouse. She clicked yes. There was no dramatic sound, no confetti, just a quiet confirmation. Status: suspended. She stared at it for a full minute as if it might change its mind. And then, nothing. She shut the laptop and stood. Her hands were cold again, but it wasn't the weather this time. It was something deeper, something alive. The motel mini-fridge held a half-empty box of wine. She poured herself a glass into the plastic hotel cup, walked over to the armchair by the window, and sat with the cup balanced on her palm like communion. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown caller. She let it ring. Then came the voicemail. She waited, then played it. Eric's voice burst out, furious and controlled. "Mom, something's going on with one of the business cards. I just got declined at dinner with a client. I had to comp the whole meal. I thought you said that account was dead. If this is a mistake, let me know. Because if it isn't, what the hell?" He hung up without saying goodbye. She played it again. And again. Her heart thudded, not with fear, not even triumph. Shock. It had worked. It actually worked. She pulled the laptop back into her lap and reopened the account. The card was still suspended. No alerts, no locks on her access. She clicked to view the associated email logs. The system hadn't even sent him a warning. The ice had been clean, invisible, like a whisper under a locked door. Then she clicked through to another tab she'd opened earlier, a spreadsheet she'd started sketching on a whim. Column A, account type. Column B, institution. Column C, her name. Yes or no. Column D, freeze capability. There were more entries than she remembered. a line of credit tied to a commercial property lease, an old retirement fund they'd both contributed to during his first marriage. She hadn't even thought about that one in years. Then she clicked through to the business card again just to recheck the balance. Balance, $8,439.73. Minimum due, $511.34. Payment due, in 2 days. She blinked. Then, slowly, she pulled up Eric's public business website, the one with all the smiling photos of him standing beside whiteboards and graphs and luxury real estate investments. She scrolled, all image, all polish, no substance. Something clicked in her brain, fast and instinctive. She opened a separate browser tab and searched Eric Jameson LLC plus property filings. Then another, Eric Jameson personal guarantee. Then another. Each window was a loose thread, and she started pulling. She didn't need a financial background to see it now. The gaps, the credit layering, the over-leveraged lines propped up by optimism and second chances. He wasn't just spread thin, he was one default away from collapse. She stared at the freeze button again, her finger hovering. If she pulled the wrong card, just one, it wouldn't be a paper cut, it would be a landslide. Olivia had never thought of herself as vengeful. She still didn't. Vengeance came from heat. This was something cooler, clinical, like cauterizing a wound. She sat at her dining table with her second cup of lukewarm tea, laptop open, spreadsheet growing. The entries now had color coding, blue for monitor, yellow for research further, and red for active. There were more reds every day. She'd begun tracing the household charges, Ashley's monthly subscription boxes, beauty, wine, gourmet dog treats. Then came the meal kits, the same-day grocery deliveries, the auto-pays on 2 separate streaming bundles. Charges hit the cards like clockwork, small but relentless. It wasn't just spending, it was expectation, a life padded by unseen wires. She clicked through the portal again. A familiar entry blinked up at her. Lease, LOC, Franklin Market Property. Issued 2016. Franklin Market, she murmured, her memory sharpened. That was the second restaurant. The Gastro Lounge with Edison bulbs and a raw oyster bar. It had lasted 8 months. The line of credit still existed, still drawing interest, and her name still listed, guarantor, co-liable. The balance wasn't enormous, just under $19,000, but the interest? Over 14%, compounding monthly. She leaned back in her chair, staring out the window at the brittle December sky. Did he even remember this account existed? Had he seen the statements and assumed the interest was a glitch? A relic? She opened the account controls and hovered over Close Line Freeze Account. Her cursor paused. She knew this would trigger something. This one wasn't silent like the others. This one had notification protocols baked in. If she froze this, it would send a flag to the bank. Eric would know. She closed the tab. For now. Instead, she picked up the phone and called the bank directly. The hold music played an off-key rendition of Winter Wonderland. When the rep finally answered, Olivia smiled politely and verified her information. Every answer matched. She knew them all. Yes, she said when asked. I'd like to confirm account co-ownership on file. A pause, some clicking. Yes, ma'am, the rep said. Your name still listed as secondary guarantor. No removal request was ever submitted. Olivia blinked, letting that land. No attempt to cut her loose. No effort to clean up. He'd left her on the hook and never even looked back. She hung up, and this time, when she clicked the freeze option, she didn't hesitate. Freeze confirmed. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She simply sat still, heart slow and level. That evening, scrolling mindlessly through her burner Facebook account, the one she used for church updates and old knitting groups, she saw it. Eric's latest post. There's nothing worse than being undermined from the inside. Watch your circle. People aren't always who they claim to be. Dozens of likes. A few vague sympathy comments. Olivia stared at the screen, unmoved. The caption didn't scare her. What struck her was the phrasing. From the inside. So he knew. Not who, but that. He was feeling the tremor, not yet seeing the fault line. She picked up her tea, now cold, and poured the rest down the sink. The call came at 9:12 a.m. on a Thursday, one of those mornings where the sky was too bright and brittle for winter, the kind that made everything feel exposed. "Hello?" Olivia answered, already sensing it wasn't spam. The number was local. A young woman's voice crackled on the other end. "Hi, is this Olivia Jameson? You're listed as the emergency contact for Lily Jameson?" Olivia stood a little straighter, the phone pressed harder to her ear. "Yes, I am. Is Lily all right?" "Oh, yes. Sorry, nothing like that. I'm her babysitter, Megan. I've worked with them for almost 2 years. I wasn't sure who else to call." Olivia sat down slowly at the kitchen table. "Go ahead." "Well, I was supposed to be paid on Monday and it didn't go through. That's never happened before. Then I heard from the school that Ashley's tuition draft bounced this month. They tried to call her but couldn't reach her, so they went down the contact list. Your name was still there." Olivia didn't speak for a long moment. Her thumb traced the edge of her ceramic mug, around and around. "I'm sorry," Megan said, awkward now. "Maybe this is outdated info. I just thought you might want to know." "No," Olivia said quietly. "You did the right thing." They hung up, polite and brief. And when the line went dead, Olivia sat frozen in her chair, a thin ribbon of nausea tightening in her stomach. The freeze hadn't just stopped Eric. It had stopped them. The tuition, the sitter's pay. Little things, big things. And her granddaughter, Lily, the soft-voiced one who still colored cards and put heart stickers on envelopes, was caught in the middle. She closed the laptop without looking at it. She needed distance. For the next 2 days, Olivia didn't log into any financial portals. She didn't touch her spreadsheet. She turned off email notifications and left her phone in the bedroom. Instead, she read mystery novels she couldn't concentrate on and refolded already folded towels. On Saturday afternoon, she opened a kitchen drawer and found the construction paper card Lily had made for her last Easter, a wobbly pink bunny with sparkly glue dots, and the words, "To Grandma, love from Lily" in crooked marker letters. Olivia closed her eyes. There were rules to all this, she realized. Invisible lines. This wasn't supposed to touch the children, and yet, hadn't she always known that wasn't entirely possible? That night, just before bed, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. One new email, password reset request, Joint Retirement Fund, Legacy Co. She hadn't sent it. She sat up slowly, the blood in her body waking up all over again. She opened the inbox. The message was official. Time-stamped just 20 minutes prior. Another one followed. Password reset attempt, unverified device, access, blocked. Her heart beat hard. She opened the portal. Everything still looked intact. Her new passwords were holding. 2-factor authentication had kicked in. Whoever had tried, Eric, had failed. But he was probing now. He wasn't just feeling tremors anymore. He was searching for the cracks. She clicked into the portal's activity log. The IP address trying to access it came from his zip code. Not even masked. He was getting careless. Or desperate. Olivia sat in the dark, the glow of her laptop screen bathing her face in pale blue. The clock read 3:41 a.m., but sleep had long surrendered. Instead, she moved through the online portals like a ghost, invisible but present, fingers deft over the keyboard. She opened the system logs. 3 failed login attempts. Legacy Co. Retirement Fund. Location, zip 29,407. Charleston, South Carolina device, iPhone, unknown. Timestamp, 11:17 p.m., 11:19 p.m., 11:21 p.m. Eric had tried 3 times. He wasn't being subtle. He wasn't using a VPN. Either he thought she wouldn't notice, or he didn't know how. She enabled 2-factor authentication across every account. She created new email aliases, rerouted verification messages, set up temporary codes that expired in minutes. She downloaded a VPN service, selected a location in Des Moines, and scrubbed her browser history until it looked like she'd never touched a financial portal in her life. Then she took a deep breath, stood up from the table, and walked to the kitchen. The linoleum was cold under her feet. She poured a glass of water, her reflection warped in the window above the sink. Somewhere in that reflection, she could still see the mother she'd once been, gentle, accommodating, slow to anger. That woman had been buried beneath years of overdraft requests and broken promises. Now, what stared back was someone different, not cruel, not vindictive, just awake. Back at the laptop, she opened Facebook. It wasn't her main account. It was a dummy one, used to quietly monitor updates from people she didn't speak to anymore. She rarely scrolled, but tonight she had a reason. Eric's profile was public again. His newest post had no caption, just a black background and white text. When it comes from inside the house, you never see it coming. 100 likes. A handful of comments, some vague condolences, others urging him to stay strong. Olivia stared at it for a full minute. The language was theatrical, self-pitying, a performance for people who didn't know the full story, who never would. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad, not to comment, just to absorb. His unraveling had begun. Publicly, he was building a narrative. Privately, he was throwing darts in the dark. She closed the tab. Her heart did something strange then. Not joy, not regret. A kind of echo. She didn't want him to crash completely. She didn't want her granddaughter's life collateralized for this. But she also couldn't pretend this wasn't necessary. And she wasn't done. She opened the spreadsheet again. One box blinked red. Legacy Co-Retirement Fund. They'd opened it together years ago. One of his more responsible moments. Back then, he called it future-proofing. She'd matched him, dollar for dollar. "When I make it big, I'll roll it over," he'd said. He never did. The account had been dormant for almost 5 years, but the balance remained, untouched, half hers, half his. She clicked into the portal and reviewed the fund summary. Balance, $34,800. Co-owner access, Olivia Jameson, Eric Jameson. Last activity, 2018. The screen asked, "Would you like to move these funds into separate, secured control?" YN. It wasn't a freeze. It was something more permanent. She didn't click. Not yet. Instead, she downloaded the transaction history and flagged every contribution made from her accounts. She needed a clean record. A paper trail. Something no lawyer could argue against. From the hallway, the grandfather clock struck 4. The sound echoed across the quiet house, rich and low and final. The call came mid-morning, while Olivia was outside brushing dead leaves off the porch railing. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket, screen flashing ERIC. She let it ring once, twice, then answered, her voice calm. "Hello?" A beat of silence, then, "Hey, got a minute?" It was his voice, but thinner now, stretched, controlled in the way people speak when they've practiced the words but not the outcome. "Of course," Olivia said. He sighed, as if her willingness to talk was a small relief. "Something weird's been happening. Accounts, access issues, weird emails. I thought it was nothing, but now the retirement fund's locked. Ashley can't pull the grocery budget. I can't even log into 2 of my business portals." Olivia widened her eyes, as if he could see her. "That's strange," she said, gentle and flat. "Have you talked to your bank?" "Yeah, twice. They're running a trace. I think it's internal." His tone shifted, edgier, accusatory but still vague. "I've had issues with this guy from a past partner. Ship. Real shady. Wouldn't surprise me if he's trying to screw with me again." Olivia didn't answer right away. Then she said, "People hold grudges, especially when money's involved." Eric took it as validation. "Exactly. And I've been too trusting, you know. That's always been my thing. I try to help people. I give too many chances. Next thing I know, they're turning it around on me." The audacity scraped her nerves raw, but she didn't let it show. "That must be hard," she said, "to be generous and still get betrayed." He went on as if she hadn't spoken. "Ashley's furious. Thinks I should call a lawyer, but that'll just stir it up. And the kids, God, I've got enough to juggle. Lily's got that school play next week, and now I'm fielding bounced payments. It's like the whole system is collapsing for no reason." Olivia walked slowly back into the house, phone pressed to her cheek. She moved with the grace of someone arranging furniture in her mind. Every word he gave her, another piece. "You ever think maybe someone close to you just got tired?" she asked quietly. He didn't take the bait. "Nah. People don't get tired when you've taken care of them. They stay loyal." She let the silence stretch, then pivoted, softening. "Have you talked to that partner lately? The one you think is behind this?" "Not directly," Eric admitted, "but he's the only one with a motive. I mean, who else would want to sabotage me? Ashley? My kids?" He laughed at his own sarcasm, bitter and sharp. Olivia's eyes settled on the corner of her spreadsheet visible on her laptop across the room. "You," she thought. "I would." But instead she said, "I remember that partner. He always struck me as opportunistic." "Exactly," Eric said, gripping her alignment. "And I was the one holding it all together. You know that. You saw what I did for everyone." She had. She saw it all differently now. The guilt trips, the one more loan calls, the way he'd twisted every act of support into obligation and every boundary into betrayal. "You've always carried so much, Eric," she murmured, her voice as warm as a quilt. "It's not fair you're still dealing with this." Eric exhaled, softer now. The suspicion in his voice faded. She could almost hear him sink into the illusion of maternal comfort. They spoke for 3 more minutes. Casual, detached. He said he'd keep her posted. She said, "Please do." When the call ended, Olivia lowered the phone slowly onto the table. Her reflection was caught in the dark window again. She looked peaceful. But inside her, something had calcified. He would never change. Not really. He was still the boy who blamed his teachers, his teammates, his bosses. Still the man who left messes for others to sweep up. Still the son who knew how to hold his mother hostage with the sound of his disappointment. She turned back to her laptop, opened the spreadsheet, moved the Legacy Co. account into a new column. Execute. The voicemail came while Olivia was outside pulling weeds from a dead flower bed, pretending the January soil still mattered. Her phone buzzed twice in the pocket of her gardening apron before going quiet. No caller ID. She let it go. An hour later, she listened. "This is Rachel Torres from Carson Elementary. I'm calling regarding Lily Jameson. Her tuition installment for the spring term hasn't processed, and today she became very upset after overhearing something in class. She thought she had to leave the school. I just wanted to make sure everything's all right at home." The message ended. Olivia sat down hard on the back step, clumps of dry soil still on her gloves. The winter wind bit at her cheeks, but she didn't feel it. All she could hear was that one sentence. She thought she had to leave the school. Lily. Sweet glitter glue Lily. This wasn't supposed to hit her. She pulled off the gloves and dropped them onto the step beside her. Her heart thudded with a strange mixture of shame and steel. Back inside, she washed her hands in silence. Her reflection in the faucet shimmered slightly. Her eyes looked tired again, but clearer, like the glass had finally been wiped clean. That evening, her phone buzzed again. This time, a text. "Ashley Jameson. Hey Olivia, hope you're well. Quick question. Do you happen to know if your name is still tied to any old accounts from Eric's past ventures? Some strange issues are popping up, let me know. No greeting, no apology, no warmth. Just the performance of civility." Olivia stared at the message. She typed a response. "I'm not sure. I'd have to check." Then she deleted it, and didn't reply at all. 2 days later, she found herself parked outside Carson Elementary. The sun had dipped behind the trees, throwing long shadows across the asphalt. Cars lined the street. Banners for the winter showcase hung from the chain-link fence. One snowy night, a K-3 musical. She wasn't invited, but she came anyway. She slipped into the back of the auditorium just as the lights dimmed. Parents filled the rows, some clapping already, others scrolling their phones. Olivia took a seat near the exit, her coat still on. Lily was near the front row on the stage, in a paper snowflake crown and silver felt mittens too big for her hands. Her cheeks glowed under the lights. She looked nervous. She looked beautiful. Olivia smiled for the first time in days. Then her eyes drifted to the 4th row. Eric sat there, slouched in his seat, his phone screen glowing against his face, not even pretending to pay attention. Ashley sat beside him, upright, watching the stage, but with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Lily sang with everything in her, voice high and sweet, swaying just slightly to the music. She glanced into the audience as if searching. When she spotted her father, her smile faltered. He didn't look up. Olivia felt something split open. It wasn't rage, it was mourning, for what she used to hope he'd become. The performance ended in a swirl of applause and camera flashes. Olivia slipped out before the lights came up. In the car, she gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. She hadn't cried during the show, but now, parked alone in the dark, she did, quietly. No heaving sobs, just tears that slid down without permission, leaving salt trails down her face. She wiped them away, started the car. The next morning, an email hit her inbox. Subject: legal inquiry regarding frozen financial instruments. The sender was a law firm in Charleston. Ashley had found the frozen accounts, all three: the retirement fund, the dormant lease line, the business card. Her name was on them. And now, they knew it. There was no demand yet, just a notice of investigation, a subtle threat in legalese. The message ended with, "Please be advised, further legal action may follow." Olivia closed the email and sat back. The game had changed. They were done guessing. Now they were coming. The envelope arrived on a Monday, cream-colored, heavy, the kind of paper that tried to feel more official than it was. Olivia stood at her mailbox holding it like it might bite. The return address read Maynard and Cole LLP, Charleston, SC. No doubt now. She walked inside, set her keys down with too much force, and slit the envelope open with a paring knife. 3 pages. Legal language, blunt and precise. You are hereby notified that your unauthorized interference in the management of joint financial instruments has caused measurable harm. You are advised to cease and desist any further actions affecting the accounts in question. Failure to resolve this matter amicably may result in a civil suit seeking damages and legal fees. Olivia read it once, then again. Then sat down at the table and began pulling out folders. Tax documents, email printouts, bank letters, copies of the original loan co-signatures, payment schedules, canceled checks. The paper trail was brittle but intact. Every missed repayment, every year-end statement, every time her name had been used as a flotation device. By noon, she had a full folder. By 2 p.m., she had an appointment. The local legal aid office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. The young attorney who greeted her looked barely 30, but sharp. Glasses, straight spine, direct eyes. "I'm Olivia Jameson," she said, extending the envelope first. "They're threatening to sue." The woman flipped through the letter briefly, then gestured to the chair. "Let's talk." They went through everything slowly. Olivia laid it out without embellishment. She didn't play the victim. She didn't even explain why she'd done it. She just showed the proof. When she finished, the attorney leaned back in her chair, eyebrows raised slightly. "Well," she said, tapping the envelope, "this isn't nearly as solid as they think it is." Olivia blinked. "It's not?" "No," the woman said. "You're not some hacker. You're a documented co-owner. You're entitled to freeze or protect any joint assets tied to your legal identity. You're also not touching any accounts that list only his name. That matters." She pulled one paper aside. "And this shows they've been leveraging your credit for years with zero repayment. You're not just defending yourself. You have grounds to countersue." Olivia stared at her. "For what?" The attorney smiled gently. "Debt recovery, possibly fraud, maybe misrepresentation. You have records, timelines. The fact that you haven't touched the money, just blocked access, that plays in your favor." Olivia's fingers curled slowly around her purse strap. They'd tried to corner her, but they'd underestimated the paperwork and her memory. She left the office with a folder full of annotated documents, a lawyer's card, and something heavier than hope: position. She wasn't reacting anymore. She was choosing. Back home, she cleared her dining table, pulled up her spreadsheet, opened a fresh tab in the browser. Small claims filing, State of South Carolina. The page loaded with simple prompts: names, amounts, timeline. She entered only what she could. Prove. Only what had her signature? Nothing vengeful. Just honest math. She paused, hovering over the last field. Claim title. She typed, co-signed, co-owned, co-burdened, then deleted it, replaced it with debt recovery, O. Jameson v.E. Jameson. Her hand didn't shake. The voicemail arrived just after dusk, when the sky outside her window had turned the same dull color as the unwashed porcelain teacup sitting beside her laptop. Olivia had been updating her notes from the legal aid office, cross-referencing loan terms and ownership clauses, when the screen lit up with Eric's name. She didn't answer. Not because she was avoiding him, but because she no longer owed him immediacy. When the message tone chimed, she waited several minutes before opening the voicemail. She listened with quiet detachment, her face unreadable, her hand motionless on the touchpad. You think you're safe behind your little firewall of paperwork? You think this is going to end well for you? Eric's voice was tighter than she'd ever heard it, coiled with fury, but tinged with panic. I've got records. I've got people who'll back me. If you don't stop this, if you don't lift those freezes, I swear to God, I'll tell everyone what kind of mother you really are. I will destroy what's left of your dignity. The message ended with a dull, mechanical click. Olivia didn't sigh. She didn't cry. She simply saved the file to a new folder on her desktop labeled Evidence, EJ. She reached for the teacup. The liquid was lukewarm, but she took a sip anyway, letting it sit bitter on her tongue. Then she opened a new tab and began drafting a response letter, only she wasn't writing to Eric. She was writing to 3 creditors, each of whom had co-signed agreements on file with her name listed plainly in the lower margin. Over the next few hours, Olivia submitted scanned documents, notarized statements, and digital proof of her legal standing. She kept her tone measured and unemotional. She wasn't pleading. She was presenting. By the time the sun had fully set, she had received confirmation emails from 2 institutions and a voicemail from a third. All 3 acknowledged receipt and said they were initiating a formal review of Eric's accounts. One used the term profile flagging. Another had quietly paused a revolving line of credit while they conducted a compliance audit. There was no glee in her response, no thrill, just progress. Later that evening, while digging through an old file cabinet in her garage to locate backup insurance forms, Olivia came across a folder she hadn't opened in years. It was thick and dust-covered, labeled in faded black ink, Cabin, Title and Financing. Her breath caught for a moment. She hadn't thought of the family cabin in a long time. The small lakefront property in North Carolina had been her grandparents', a place layered with decades of childhood summers, winter retreats, and the quiet memory of simpler times. It was never fancy, just sacred. After her parents passed, the cabin had been transferred into Olivia's name, with Eric's added later, jointly, when she could no longer maintain it alone. She opened the folder slowly. Inside, nestled between property tax slips and maintenance estimates, was a refinancing agreement dated 7 years prior. Her signature appeared neatly on the dotted line. But something was wrong. She examined the date, June 12th. That was the same month she'd undergone knee replacement surgery and had spent 2 weeks recovering on pain medication. He had brought her mail back then, sorted it, handled things. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but focus. The refinancing papers were real, stamped, notarized. But she hadn't signed them. Not while lucid, not while informed. A part of her wanted to believe it was an oversight, a missed conversation, a misunderstood form. But the weight in her stomach told the truth. He had used her when she was most vulnerable. She didn't panic. Instead, she reached for her phone and called Ray Benson. When he answered, she skipped pleasantries. Ray, I need help. The cabin. Eric refinanced it without my knowledge. I just found the papers. He didn't sound surprised. Do you have the documents in front of you? I do. My name's on the loan. But I was recovering from surgery. I wasn't in a state to approve this. Then it's time to flag the deed and notify the title office. And, Olivia, This crosses into fraud. I know. He guided her through the process, how to request a freeze on title transfers, which local office to alert, and how to document that she hadn't knowingly signed. She took notes. Precise. Quiet. Once it was done, she returned inside, lit the fireplace, and pulled from a drawer an old photograph, one of the last they'd taken together as a family. It was Christmas 2012. Everyone had worn matching sweaters. Lily was a baby then. Ashley had insisted on the photo. Olivia had pretended to smile. She stared at it for a long time before tossing it into the flames. It curled into blackness slowly, almost gently, until it folded in on itself and disappeared completely. There were no tears this time, no trembling, only clarity. The diner was one of those places with vinyl booths that stuck to the backs of your thighs and laminated menus that hadn't changed since the early 90s. Olivia chose it deliberately, neutral ground, public enough to keep things civil, familiar enough to remind Ashley she was no longer playing in a world curated by Instagram and catered luncheons. She arrived early and sat at a corner table facing the door. She ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. The clink of cutlery and soft hum of conversation made the wait tolerable. At 6:17 p.m., Ashley walked in. She looked smaller than Olivia remembered, not physically, but in presence. Her hair was too neat, her makeup too effortful. She scanned the room and spotted Olivia, forcing a smile as she approached. "Hi," Ashley said, easing into the booth across from her. Olivia gave a slow nod. "Ashley." There was a pause. A long one. Then the performance began. "I appreciate you meeting me," Ashley said. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "I know things have gotten complicated." "That's one word for it," Olivia said, her tone even but not inviting. Ashley let out a breath that tried to sound casual. "We're in a really difficult spot right now. You probably know that." Olivia said nothing. Ashley reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. A tuition notice. She laid it gently on the table between them, as if it might burn. "Lily's school won't hold her spot for spring unless the account clears by the end of the month, and the sitter just stopped showing up because her payment bounced. We're not asking for charity. I just think maybe this has gone a little too far." Olivia glanced at the paper but didn't touch it. She waited. Ashley's expression flickered, a crack in the composure. "I know you're angry. I know Eric's made mistakes. But the girls, Olivia, they don't understand any of this." Olivia finally spoke, voice calm but sharp. "Did they understand when I stood outside your house on Thanksgiving for half an hour, waiting to be let in?" Ashley blinked. Olivia continued. "Did they understand when you sent me to a motel while you posted photos of your designer tree and $1,000 handbags? When you joked about my phone and called me old school, like I was some dusty antique you were forced to tolerate?" Ashley's lip trembled, just slightly. "I didn't mean—" "I'm not here for apologies," Olivia said, interrupting with a softness that cut deeper than anger. "I'm here to set conditions." Ashley looked up. Desperation lived in her eyes now, thinly veiled. "I will lift the freeze on the tuition account. Nothing more. Not the business lines, not the cabin, not the retirement fund." Ashley swallowed hard. "But only," Olivia continued, "if you remove Eric from any financial instruments moving forward. I want notarized documentation. I want repayment terms drafted by an independent mediator. And I want it in writing that you understand I'm not your personal safety net." Ashley sat back. Her fingers twisted the paper napkin in her lap. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, very quietly, she said, "I'm divorcing him." The words hovered between them, heavier than anything Olivia expected. Ashley's voice cracked as she went on. "He's lied to me for years, about money, about work, about who he even is. I didn't know about the cabin, or the second refinance on the car. I found out last week that he took a loan against our life insurance policy. I can't do this anymore." Olivia stared at her. She saw the mascara starting to smudge, the trembling hands, the woman underneath the performance. "You want my help," she said. Ashley nodded. "I need someone who knows what he's capable of. Someone who won't flinch." For a brief second, Olivia thought of Lily in her snowflake crown, of her quiet voice on the phone, of the Christmas photo curling into smoke. "Then you'll give me everything," Olivia said. "Full transparency, no surprises." Ashley didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," she whispered. "Anything." The courtroom was smaller than Olivia expected. No grand oak-paneled walls or vaulted ceilings, just fluorescent lighting, beige carpet, and a judge who looked as weary as the rest of them. Still, it felt like a cathedral, sacred in its own way, honest, at last. Olivia sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, the folder of documents beside her like a shield she didn't need to raise. Across the aisle, Eric sat flanked by a lawyer in a charcoal suit. His hair was thinner, grayer than she remembered. His face held none of its old charm, only calculation, like a gambler on his final hand. Ashley sat at her own table, her posture tense but unshaking. She wore no makeup today, no wedding ring, only a soft gray sweater and eyes that had seen too much. When Olivia was called to testify, she stood slowly and walked forward. The clerk swore her in, and the microphone amplified her name. She spoke it clearly, without tremor. "What is your relationship to the defendant, Eric Jameson?" the attorney asked. "I'm his mother." "And can you describe in your own words the financial arrangement you shared over the past 20 years? She did, carefully, without venom. She spoke of the loans, the co-signatures, the debt in her name. She handed over printed evidence of forged applications, one notarized while she was recovering from surgery. She described the long trail of excuses, the manipulation, the way financial dependence had been built brick by brick until it became a wall she couldn't climb. When asked if she ever consented to the more recent financial maneuvers, refinancing the cabin, borrowing against retirement, she answered, "No, not knowingly, not freely." There was a stillness in the room as she stepped down. No cross-examination followed. Ashley took the stand next. What she said was quieter, but no less damning. She spoke of bounced payments, secret accounts, debt disguised as business ventures. She described the moment she found a second credit line taken out in her name, and the time Eric had used their daughter's social security number as a security answer for a business account she hadn't even known existed. Olivia watched her with something like sympathy, not forgiveness, but recognition. When it ended, the judge didn't pause long. In a clipped but deliberate voice, he ruled in Ashley's favor. Full financial separation, primary custody of both children, removal of Eric from all remaining joint accounts, and immediate forfeiture of the cabin until ownership could be re-established. Eric didn't shout. He didn't look at the judge or the clerk or his lawyer. He looked at Olivia. His expression wasn't rage. It was disbelief, like something had been peeled back, like he was seeing her, not as a mother, not as a shield, but as a person, and he didn't recognize her. Olivia met his gaze without blinking. No anger, no apology. Just a silence she owed only to herself. The clerk called the next case. The shuffle of papers and soft murmurs resumed, but to Olivia, the noise fell away like static. In the hallway outside, Ashley caught up with her. "The lawyer says we'll be in touch about restitution. You're legally entitled to repayment." Olivia looked at her. "I don't want the money." Ashley blinked. "You could." "I didn't come here for a reward," Olivia said. "I came for the record." She turned and walked down the corridor without waiting for a response. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds for the first time in days. The air was crisp, unburdened by heat or cold, just clean. She stepped off the courthouse steps and paused at the sidewalk, letting the light fall full on her face. It wasn't peace, exactly, but it was the beginning of it. And after all these years, beginnings were more valuable than forgiveness. The parking lot behind the courthouse was mostly empty by the time Olivia reached her car. The sun had slipped behind the taller buildings downtown, and the temperature had started its slow, steady drop toward evening. She moved without urgency, her keys in hand, her bag slung lightly over her shoulder. For once, she wasn't checking over it. She unlocked the door, opened it halfway, then heard footsteps behind her. She turned before he spoke. Eric stood several yards away, just outside the yellow-painted lines of the parking stall. He wasn't puffed up or posturing like he had so many times before. His tie hung loose. His blazer was slung over one arm, wrinkled and limp. The skin under his eyes was shadowed, not just from poor sleep, but from something deeper. A hollowing. "I thought maybe you'd at least talk to me," he said, voice low, stripped of the heat and venom he'd always relied on. One-on-one, without all the lawyers and paperwork. Olivia didn't speak. She let the wind fill the pause, light and dry as it brushed past them. Eric stepped a little closer, not enough to invade, just enough to be heard. "You could have come to me. You could have said something before dragging it into court." Olivia tilted her head. "You mean before I dragged it into sunlight?" He flinched. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough. Eric shifted his weight, eyes glancing to the asphalt, then back up. "Why would you do this to your own son?" The words landed softly. No accusation, no theatrics, just the aching bewilderment of a man finally facing consequences he didn't think applied to him. Olivia looked at him, really looked, at the man who once clutched her finger as a toddler in parking lots like this, at the boy who'd cried over scraped knees and forgotten birthdays, then grown into the man who weaponized love like a ledger. There was no triumph in her face, only clarity. "I did this," she said, "because you stopped being my son the moment you stopped being a decent human being." Eric didn't respond. His mouth opened as if to protest, but he didn't speak. There was nothing left to argue, no gaslight left to spark. He stood there for another beat, chest rising, then turned and walked away. Not fast, not slow, just gone. No apology, no last jab, just the soft rhythm of retreating shoes across cracked pavement until he reached his car and drove off without looking back. Olivia stood still for a long moment. Then she exhaled and climbed into the driver's seat. The ride home was quiet. No radio, just the hum of tires over familiar roads and the fading echo of a voice she no longer needed to fear. That evening, Olivia sat at her desk in the living room, soft lamp glow pooling around her like a warm cocoon. The documents were already printed, the folder labeled Final. She opened her estate planner and added a single amendment. Primary beneficiaries, Lily Jameson and Nora Jameson. In trust, to be managed by independent fiduciary until age 25. No mention of Eric, no footnotes, no fine print. She signed the page and slid it into the folder with the quiet finality of someone who had learned to love with guardrails. In the kitchen, she poured herself a glass of boxed red wine, not to celebrate, not to mourn, but to mark the moment. She carried it to the old armchair near the window, the one with the quilt she'd mended 3 times and refused to replace. She sat. No television, no phone, just the hush of the room and the snow beginning to fall in slow, drifting flakes beyond the glass. She took a sip, closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she reached for her laptop. One last thing. She navigated to the portal she hadn't checked in over a week, the last account still in limbo, the old Franklin Market lease. The screen loaded slowly. Her hand hovered over the mouse, not anxious, just steady. Status, closed. Balance, $0. A small smile passed her lips. Not joy, not glee, just something clean. Settled. The cursor blinked for a moment longer, then she shut the lid. And for the first time in years, Olivia Jameson didn't owe anyone anything.